Check. Check. Oh, and we got a little bit of a feedback loop there going for a second. Hello, everybody. I am Tenacious Earl, and this is live from the Tenacious Dugout, this little place that's been dug out of the ground, namely my basement. And yeah, this is the title of this episode is Hindsight Is, and the reason it's titled Hindsight is that you say at the end of it 2020, and that's what we are. And I believe this is my first video of 2020, and this is January 20th, 2020, which is pretty rough. Let me see. Did I get that in the new year? I don't know. I don't know if that was in the new year, but it probably wasn't. It was probably before we switched over to the old 2020. So, hope everybody's new year has started off well. Um, so I came up with a little list here. I'm going to start with, before I get to what I've been up to, I want to start with something that I just want to say is feedback. One of the things, and it's one of the things that I was not so up to until just recently. And so when you are a YouTube creator, you've got an app you can put on your phone called Studio. And in that, as well as like the YouTube app itself, if you've got a couple channels or whatever, you can set that to be for whatever channel that you typically use. The app on my phone for the YouTube app is usually the old channel that I used to put these tabletop videos on, which was called Tenacious Strat. And you're welcome to subscribe to it if you want to. I haven't really posted. Actually, one time I posted something by accident. I had somehow switched something in when I was recording these with my phone. I had forgot to switch it out, and it recorded Tenacious Strat, and that was kind of a funny thing. But because I've been using my laptop to do the streaming and encoding and all that stuff, I use that. But getting back to my point, the Studio app on your phone, you can kind of like see what's going on as far as like comments and how you guys interact with the channel, how you watch, things like that, which is cool. Nothing about this channel, but so what happened was is that in that Studio app, I have that on the Tabletop Baseball Plus channel most of the time because I'm interested to see the comments that come from videos that I post on here. But for whatever reason here since the new year, I had switched it over to the Tenacious Strat channel. And I noticed there were some comments in there. And the most recent comments were some videos that were tutorials that were from a couple of years ago because like I said, I haven't posted anything over there. And they were, there were a couple of constructive feedback comments, and then there were a couple that were less constructive. And I guess what I want to do is try to embrace the feedback as best I can. So some of the feedback was trying to complete my thoughts. And I'll tell you what, I know that when I get into a setting like this where I'm recording live, I can kind of like jump back and forth. I did it a little earlier, and I know I do. What I would like to try to do is be a little more organized, try and come up with lists of points. But I also like to do things sort of extemporaneously too. I don't necessarily like to structure things out. I like to be able to look over here, and if someone's on the live chat, be able to respond. If you are on the live chat right now, or watching this live and you want to chat with me, I'll probably answer your questions. Um, I don't like to just stick to a script, but I also, now granted, these were from a couple of years ago, these videos. Maybe my style has improved some. I don't know. Uh, but I do know that I can get a little bit scatterbrained and a little bit jumpy. I can start, going down rabbit holes. Some of the other comments, I think, when you're doing videos here, and especially when you're doing like a game video, you get into that mode where you're not sure whether you're broadcasting to an audience that has played, whether they played the video game. Sometimes I wonder, if we may have people who watch, young kids who watch, who maybe don't even really know much about the sport itself. They see somebody rolling dice on a video for whatever reason. Maybe it just, YouTube puts up these recommendations. Maybe they got recommended a video, one of these videos, and I wonder if they even know what baseball is about. Maybe they've never played it, or maybe they're from a different country and baseball isn't the sport. Maybe they play cricket or rugby or who knows what, squash. I mean, there's lots of different sports, so I guess I get caught up in trying to explain the sport as much as explaining the game on the tabletop itself. And there were a couple other comments about that, or maybe from one person, but it kind of struck home because it's, I have to keep in mind that the people who are on and subscribe to this channel are almost all longtime sports fans, and creating game videos for you guys, I'm going to have to get out of the mode of thinking about things from the viewpoint of I'm teaching you guys how to play baseball or soccer or football or whatever may be. So those are just a couple of feedback items that I got, and I don't know, I guess once I started looking at those coupled with just being busy, I guess it has kind of left me at a point where I was trying to figure out the best way to kind of like get back to doing this. And so, I chat from time to time with Tabletop Earl about what's going on. And, about a week ago, I messaged him and I was like, yeah, I haven't been putting out videos, and it's just life has been a little hectic. But there's also, I didn't mention the part about the comments, but, you just have this thing where you're just not sure how you want to proceed going forward. And every time I talk to him about these things, because this has come up in the past, he's always like, just play the games and, make the videos and don't worry about it. People will watch, people will like it. And I guess I probably need to be a little less, self-reflective or whatever, but I don't know. It's easy to do because, each of us who are YouTube creators, we want to, there's probably somewhat a selfish aspect. You'd like to see your channel succeed, but, in terms of this, I also want to see more people be attracted to the tabletop sports genre. So being able to communicate these things in a succinct fashion, with clarity, with in an organized fashion that isn't going to confuse, as opposed to, and sometimes just playing the games out will be the best way to see how to do it. But I don't know. Anyway, I kind of gone on a little too far about this feedback stuff, but I got a couple comments here from Salvador America. Like everything the way it is, off the cuff and natural. Don't overdo it. Don't script it. He says, Salvador says, what's up? Well, that's what I'll get to next. That's funny. That was the first thing on my list, and I kind of skipped over it for a minute. I have been playing, as you can see here, what has been on my table most recently is uh, second season football. I have this 9-team league that I'd love to feel more comfortable putting this game on the channel here. I just kind of feel like it's a little long. Also, I don't know. It's sometimes it just gets a little disjointed um, when you play the game. It doesn't. It's not like a free flowing play by play like baseball can be. Stratomatic or ABBA. It's like you can really kind of get into rhythm, and it's much quicker as far as the results go, as opposed to second season here, which you a lot of times have multiple checks on a roll, and sometimes even multiple rolls. But I do think that I'm gearing towards maybe trying to come up with another stab at some kind of a tutorial with this game. But what I would prefer to do is almost more of a what do I want to call it? How I do's as much as a tutorial, because there's the way that they talk about in the book, and then each of us gets our own little nuances, our own little ways to sort of like get around certain problem areas, um, solutions to problems, things like that. That um, you know, the, I feel like from a channel standpoint, if you're going to try and help teach people, that it can be better to kind of give them an insight as to how you modify things to best play it out. And I'll tell you what, I've been doing the second season, and what I found is, and again, here's another thing. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but um, the channel, playing games on the channel always seems to make me want to rush. I feel like I'm trying to get everything done in a window. And I will say, just sitting here, I actually got this little guy out here for second season, because I'm currently using, on each roll, I roll, I don't know if I can get it up here, but uh, basically 2D2s, or no, 2D20s, 3D6s, and the decider die. And so I've decided to steal this little cup from a board game that we have. You could use maybe a Yahtzee cup, or you could just probably go buy one at your local discount store, a little plastic jobber for maybe $1 at the dollar store, maybe $5 at Wally World or whatever. But I find that when I just roll this and I think things through, and it's just very relaxing. And that's kind of the thing about the doing the tabletop stuff, because I did, I played plenty of games before I got started doing the other channel, when I was doing the first Tenacious League, and I was attracted to doing all of this tabletop gaming stuff because it was a release. It was a getting away from some real negative things in my work life, and this was a way to sort of like plow into an endeavor that would be something that I had a lot of control over, as opposed to um, work, which really I had no control over at that point what was going on with that. But now that once you get to playing these games a long time, you realize it's not so much in your control as you might think. It's somewhat in these little buggers' control that are in this cup, So, um, but I've also played some more ABBA soccer. I still have match week 5 to go in that. And once I get through that, then that will be the end of the group play. There will be, so I've come up with, let me just talk about this for a minute. Let's get to ABBA soccer and the Crazy Prem Cup. Let's get to what the knockouts are going. So again, I'm talking to people maybe who already know something about soccer and about cups and all this stuff, but just bear with me for a moment. In like the World Cup, you've got group play, and then from there you get the top teams, and they go into what's called the knockout. It's basically single elimination, is what we call it here in America most times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top two from each 5-team group. That'll be 8. What I decided uh, through in about match week 2 is that I wanted this to be feel a little less predictable. So I actually decided to bring in 9 and 10 as well. So I'm going to seed out the top 2 third place teams in each group and say, okay, we're going to take 7 and 10, 8 and 9. They're going to play sort of the play-in round, and then from there we'll have 8s, that go into that single elimination bracket, the knockouts, if you will. So that will be the top part of the bracket. Now, another thing that really didn't occur to me until I think I was chatting with my friend RNGIDP is his channel here on YouTube. He hasn't done too many videos lately, but I kind of bug him a bit with odds and ends about the projects I'm doing. I'm sure that he marginally finds it interesting. um, but sometimes what I do end up finding is that bouncing some things around uh, with him sort of stokes a little bit of ingenuity in my head, and something that sort of came to mind when I was talking about this with him was, um, you know, Premier. So I wanted to sort of model Premier League a little bit, just using the cup format. Well, Premier League has relegation, right? I mean, how are we going to do that? So what I'm going to do from there is take the bottom team from each group, and they're going to go into a relegation round robin, actually double round robin, and then the best team from that 4. So it's going to be, let's see, there's 4 teams. So actually, we're just going to do it's going to be it's a double round robin, home and away. So that's 6 games for each team, but they're going to all play each other twice, home and away. You're going to stack them up in the table. It's going to be points, so 3 for a win, 1 for a draw, and 0 for a loss. That'll be the first designation. The second one would be goal differential, and then the third would be goals scored, would be our way of determining who was the best team at who are the full the full how the all 4 rate out. It doesn't make a difference because the bottom 3 would be our relegation losers, whatever you want to call it. and they would end up being the ones we would say should be relegated from that league based on this cup tourney. So that's how I'm going to do it. I think so. It's going to add a few games sort of to the end. It kind of feels like the History Maker Golf, the Slacker Tour a little bit, in that I'm not sure how much high drama there will be in it. Probably not a whole lot, but um, you know, it's definitely not it's just a way to encapsulate what goes on in the Premier League. My projects, I try to set them up in a way that I'd like to bring about similar results through a smaller format. And I don't know, is this going to work in this, but we're going to try. Okay, so I kind of got onto this script a little bit and I ignored the chat. So Dave S is around. Cool. Let's play possible. How is second season football? So second season football. I'll tell you what. I think most football games, American football, obviously, soccer is football in most of the world, but in where we're at, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the real world football in a moment. But for American football, second season, I do like it. I also own Strat football. I really haven't been able to get into it much because I don't know how to do the solo aspect. I'd love to do a project with it, but I'm just not sure how to play it solo. It's one of those games that feels like it's a little bit more geared towards the sort of head-to-head play, but I'm sure that there are lots of people who have done solo strat projects, and I just maybe need to do a little bit more digging on the internet and in the forums that are around and try to get the ideas of how to carry one out with strat football. Second season, um, it's nice because everything basically comes on a sheet. You can print them out, or you can have Keith at Play Games. He'll send you the package of them too. Actually, I think with the package you probably get them on card stock that could be either folded or maybe I forget if it's torn in half. I really haven't gotten too many of those cards since. I mean, the only ones I have that are the card stock were bought with the game so itself, and that was only just I think 4 teams. Um, it's basically there are several designations for players, um, and some are just sort of blanket how this player is against the pass and the run, or with the pass and the run, and then there's other metrics that kind of go with like the quarterback's completion percentage and effectiveness running the ball inside and outside, things like that. And what I find with second season, for me at least, in doing this project is a good bit of time is spent trying to figure out how best to use the players that are on the sheet, because they give you a starting lineup, but then if you go and look at how a team played in week 8 of the 2016 season, which is what I'm following here, you've got guys like James Bradbury for the Carolina Panthers who were out that game. And so I'm trying to cut them out. But then you've also got, you can look at your snap counts and say, oh, Coney Ely played about 70% of his snaps. So how do I get, the right balance of snaps versus, who else played the position with him? Who came in when he was getting his rest, or tactically, who did the coach put in there at the defensive end position to spell Coney, or who did Coney Ely spell for most of the time? And so a lot of my time is spent trying to figure out the best way to set up the teams. And again, that's something that I really could do some tutorials on, and maybe I will here in the next couple of weeks or so. Tribe fan, hello. Salvador stumbled upon it. That's cool. Trying to stay warm. It's very cold here. Light snow in northeast Ohio, as Tribe fan says. Dave S. Yeah, Tribe fan. You know, I wish I had. I wish I sat down and watched more of the stuff that's being put out there. But and a lot of what I have hoped to do is to be supportive of community. And sometimes I feel like it kind of gets lost in the fact that, I'm a parent and a husband and a, 40-hour a week kind of guy. Sometimes it can be tough, but, I'm Tribe fan has been a guy who picks some projects that aren't necessarily the most, um, uh, that they can, how do I want to put it? Cause I don't want it to sound, I want to give it the right amount of respect, because I think I think it's very extremely respectable to pick projects that maybe are daunting. Playing a team that lost a bunch of games, uh, and trying to do better with them, it means you're probably going to do a good bit of losing in that, and it may get you down. But the other nice thing about doing that kind of thing is you also get to see all the other teams if you're going to play a replay. You get to see most of the players that were contemporaries of that team. And, you kind of get a feel for, um, you know, some of those players. Maybe you only get 3 games each of them, but now granted, you're getting 160 some odd games maybe of some guys that weren't so great, but you also get a feel for maybe why those teams weren't so great either, and maybe the lessons you can learn from that. But and it's Tribe Fan 879. So let's see. Down and distance will dictate for pass and run defenses. Yeah. So right, and that kind of gets back in this the second season to some of my um, difficulties. Yeah, because best laid plans. You get there and you get started, and you've got I feel like I have things pretty well mapped out. But for instance, this game I just did, it was Baltimore hosting Carolina. Baltimore got out to a 17-0 lead in the first quarter, and at that point, then Carolina, you've got the 2016 team has Jonathan Stewart, and he's getting probably 20 carries a game, and that goes right out the window when you're down by 17 points. You got Cam Newton who's running, sweeps, quarterback sweeps, and scrambling half the time, and when you're going into the third quarter down by almost 20, it's really just sets up a different game plan where it turns into a lot of passes. And so then, I've got the Baltimore defense set up with, it's never going to be perfect. So you just do the best you can. You try to do a good job. And like I said, the slowing things down, for instance, with this second season game, when I'm speeding through it, the mistakes, they may not mean anything in the grand scheme. I mean, this is in our own little simulation here, and I don't mean little to sound like trite or mean or dismissive or anything like that, but it's just like someone else down the street could play the same game and they may get different results because just the way we do it. But a lot of what we do here is that we want to have confidence that the way that we did this is right. The way that it carried out, like I'm a scientist. I want things to be done well and done with accuracy and not messed up and not, let bias sneak in, which can happen if you don't keep. And I mean, it's not just team bias either. It can be bias towards a process because you think this happens a little too much, or I just rolled this the second time in a row. That's not fun, or that doesn't seem fair that somebody's getting sacked by the same guy twice in a row. But guess what? In real life, that does happen sometimes. So, sometimes those numbers do come up 2 in a row. So anyway, I guess it's just my over analytical self. Okay, let's move on. So that's what and then life. I got kids and musicals and I'm a part of a couple of different teams when it comes to music and stuff. So I just have a lot going on, and so sometimes it's just about making a video can take a little bit of extra time, but also you get into games like second season where just finding the best way to put it into a video format is it's a little daunting might be the right word, but to take a word from History Maker Golf, daunting or just it kind of is a lot to have sort of looking over your shoulder. But all right, so let's see. I think I covered those first three. So let's talk about sports and sort of like real life here. Super Bowl. We've got the NFL playoffs just about done. We've got a week and almost 6/7 left to go before Super Bowl 50 whatever 4, maybe it's 54 or something. Um, Chiefs and 49ers. Playoffs have been pretty interesting. You've got the Patriots going out early, which has kind of set up this whole, is Brady retiring? Is Brady moving on? Is he coming back to the Patriots? And all of the hysteria about that, which is, again, hysteria. But, you get them out early, and it's just sort of like a rebirth of three-quarters of the country's interest in football, I feel like, because I don't know. I just think people are kind of sick of that team winning now. The people in Boston aren't sick of them, but understandably so. But a lot of the rest of the country, I think it just kind of gave everybody a new lease on watching the sport. And then you have a team like Tennessee, Cinderella story. They caught a couple teams at the right time. Um, New England not really planning for the end of Brady and his sort of deterioration and needing to have some extra help there for him. And, kind of like what the Broncos ended up having for Manning when they brought him in. They had basically had one of the top defenses of all time. New England's defense is pretty good, but it's just not quite there. And, and then you got the Ravens, which kind of like what I was talking about with the Carolina team here in 2016. You get them behind, and their whole game plan changes. And it's the same thing with Baltimore, and Tennessee was able to do that. And whether that's Vrabel or whether that's just sort of the way luck kind of went that day, I kind of feel like it's mostly the luck thing. I think Vrabel showed against the Chiefs there that I don't know as he was really, I feel like they abandoned the run pretty quickly, and Kansas City wasn't that far out in front, and it's just, it looked to me like Derrick Henry became less and less of a factor, even when it was still a tight enough game that a score would have gotten them back to even either level or maybe even slightly ahead. So, and then you got the 49ers beating the Packers, which the Packers are another team kind of like the Patriots, who have been around a long time. Now, Rodgers has been hurt in the last couple of seasons, which has caused that to sort of change a bit. They haven't been as dominant as they were when Rodgers was fully healthy and really in his prime. Um, I think Kansas City's going to be the one that wins this Super Bowl. I just think they have too many weapons right now. And, the 49ers defense is good, but I'm not sure that Garoppolo is good enough. And, we'll just have to see. I think the Chiefs did pretty well at forcing Tennessee out of the run game. And if they can do that with the 49ers, I'm not sure Garoppolo can gunsling it the way that he needs to keep up with Mahomes and company. So, anyway, so it's been a completely different sort of postseason narrative to what we've had in most of the years since the advent of Tom Brady in the league. So let's get on to the next thing, which is on my list here, which is the Astros and the Boston Red Sox scandals, which, um, you know, I don't know. I don't know if Tabletop Earl has talked about any of this in any of his videos that, in his most recent project. Check out his project. If you haven't been doing that, please do. But, what a what a disaster for baseball right now. They've taken what seems to be the story of an Astros team that was, by all accounts, one that was a sort of homegrown group of players, came up through and did some great things, and it's got basically all gone in the crapper with and not only just all gone in the, I mean, it already was in the crapper probably because maybe they weren't that good, and the um, it, I'm not mentioning it because so far, but I will here in a second because I'm thinking most people already know what this is about. But um, basically, the Astros were using the live video feed to look at the signs given by the catcher, and from there it was able to be relayed to the batter in real time using audible signals, usually the uh, hitting of a barrel or a trash can or something like that really loud, or maybe using a whistle of some sort to alert the batter that the pitch was either going to be a fastball or be an off speed pitch to try and give them a leg up. And you had AJ Hinch, as well as, I'm not sure, I can't remember what his name is, the Astros general manager, both getting suspended for a year. Alex Cora of the Red Sox, as they were also found to have been doing similar things with using technology to get the signs and relay that information to the batter. Um, so all of those guys have been let go by their teams as well. Obviously you're not going to pay people to be on your staff that are just. I mean, I guess the Saints did it with Sean Payton, but it's also an interesting narrative that you see the NFL having similar kinds of espionage or whatever you want to call it, illegal, illegally accessing the other team's proprietary information um, with little to no repercussion for the players themselves. Like, not, I don't mean the players. I mean the Bill Belichick's, the ones who are the masterminds of these setups, have really not gotten any repercussion aside from maybe a draft pick here or there, or maybe a fine that Robert Kraft paid out of his, you know, I don't know, South Florida spending money or whatever. So just the dichotomy between the NFL and how they basically swept it under the rug, and baseball, how they have taken it to the point where it almost damages the credibility of the league itself. It's kind of tough. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think you have to respect the way baseball has handled it because it is a kind of a disastrous thing. But I don't know. I'm not sure um, because and it's tough because you've got a lot of the media that's out there that and social media that are major Yankee fans who are the ones that are probably most up in arms about this because they feel like they've been jobbed. They always feel like they're jobbed even though they're spending the most money. Because they're spending the most money, they should obviously just be handed the title regardless. But, now maybe they have some merit to this. Maybe they kind of got rooked. I don't know. I mean, you hate to have a situation where you give uh, maybe one of the most, yeah, so tough to say, but one of the more, um, however I say it, it's going to come out bad. So I guess I just shouldn't say it. But you hate to give the Yankees any kind of out to say, oh, see, we were right. We were wronged here. I feel like they've been the team that's basically forced other teams to go spend gobs of money on players like A-Rod, and then they come back around and get the same player at a fraction of the cost, and then also basically give up garbage prospects in the process to get him. So it's just they kind of are they're always kind of playing in what I would consider to be an unfair game in the grand scheme of the league finance. But anyway, yeah, I keep just finishing out my list here. I just had holidays down here. Again, it's 20 days into the new year, and so we've had um, Christmas, New Year's, and now today was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. A lot of you probably didn't have it off. Some of us did. I was fortunate enough. For years, I did not have this day off from work. But, it is a good day to reflect on how far this country has come, and, just how much farther we do need to go in order to make sure that, all people are treated with respect and the kindness that should be afforded to everybody. But, on a day of pioneers, we just, it's a nice time to be able to reflect. And so there's that. And we already mentioned it here. The weather has just been somewhat insane. You'll get a couple of days of 55, 60 degree weather here, maybe even up close to 70. And tonight it is 26 here in the mid-Atlantic, and it's going to get down to 19 tonight. So, that's what we like to call cold weather. I want to come up with a spicy name, but it wasn't coming to mind. So, I saw here in the chat earlier about All-Star lineup baseball. You know what? That's another game that I really kind of need to pull back out again and maybe do a little bit more with that. Just, it's it just ends up being a lot of things here. I'm going to get back to doing more baseball, but sometimes you just get on this roll of certain sports and it's kind of tough to get back. So, stealing signs in live action is not a problem. Using technology to do it is horrible. That's what Dave Little. Hi, Dave. Hi, at Brian. And Brian correctly asserts that the home and road splits were indicative, although I think the playoffs were much more favorable towards that kind of scenario than I think the regular season. Maybe not. Maybe the majority of them had better home versus road, but I think there were a couple that were not quite as stark in the regular season as they might have been in the postseason. Union has all the power. Let's see. Oh, it's because the players are not getting punished. Well, yeah. Yeah, the players and the union. Yeah, I don't know. It until you have a clear until you have clear evidence that the players themselves were devising or were conspiring to devise. I mean, I guess you definitely should. You've got the video of Altuve coming home after a walk-off homer and basically saying, "Don't take off my shirt because I'm using a buzzer." There's a buzzer under here, and if anybody sees that, if you rip off my shirt, then the jig's gonna be up. So you do have that, but I don't know. Where is it? The chicken or the egg come first? Who was the one to really be the mastermind behind all that? And I kind of feel like I feel like it's just one of those things that started happening because it was probably relatively, I'm guessing it was relatively innocuous. You have this manager replay come into baseball, and the manager's there, and he's like saying to himself, "Man, I'll tell you what, it would really be helpful to me if I had somebody that was just inside the dugout who had direct access to the play and could see that bang bang play and see the replay come across on the TV in that little bit of time we have before the umpire shuts us down for a replay challenge. So if I can get him to tell me yes or no, this is worth challenging or not, then I'm going to put somebody right there and I'm going to do that." And so the question is, who is the one that makes the jump from, oh, this, we're going to use this for replay, to then say, wow, this is, what, this is like, we can get the live feed from like Fox Sports, whatever, and it's right there. And wow, that's really clear. This is like high def. And I could see those signals. And, we used to be able to do this, had to do this from second base. And, maybe we can even zoom this in and really get in there close. And, I don't know. And who is the one to take the replay monitor and to say, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to use this in order to see the symbol, the signals, and we're going to make a concerted effort to figure out how, um, to how to get these players the information so that they can then uh, know when to when to swing. It's not even, may not even be when to swing. It's just knowing what pitch is coming. You know, it basically just sets you up to say, okay, this is going to be off speed. Well, I know this pitcher's off speed pitch is like a 78 mile an hour throw. So, or if you don't hear it, then you're like, okay, as soon as he starts his windup, I got to be thinking, I'm on this fastball. And so all my mechanics start a little earlier and I'm going to get there quicker. And I don't have to worry about that hook. And so, um, that's what it's all about. And again, as I said earlier in the videos, maybe this is probably everybody who follows this channel is a baseball person and would have already thought through this 100 times. So anyway, make the noise so the players knew what was coming. Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, obviously they were in on it. The question becomes, are sure, it helps. It definitely helps them. I mean, each of them is going to go and get a contract extension or go become a free agent and get a big deal off of it. So at what point is it about the team and at what point is it about the player? And I don't know. I mean, uh, I don't know. I mean, you're gonna see just what happens here with uh, what does the Astros season look like coming up? Are they going to go out and dominate like they did? If they still dominate, then I guess there'll probably still be people, just like I've said, the Patriots probably continue to cheat, that the Astros continue to cheat, and they've just figured out another way to do it, and maybe they have. I don't know, but this has gone on a long time for this. But anyway, most of all, I just wanted to come out here and tell everybody that I'm still playing games, and I'm definitely looking to figure out ways to get content back here on the channel that is gonna entertain you folks. So that should be soon. We'll get some basic strat out here again. I'll probably try and get some second season and maybe some kind of a little bit of a tutorial, or as I was calling it, a how I do sort of thing. How some of the things that I do to try to help sort of help with the realism slash just work around some things that kind of come up that are a little bit of difficulties here and there. So All right, last check of the comments before I shut her down. It's been about just short of an hour. Brian, I think the cheating was about the money. Cheaters know inside they are not winners. Salvador says it's about the game and the integrity of the game. Um, yeah, and again, I feel like that's why when you've got a team like New England with a coach that's gone rogue and doing things that are obviously hurting the. I mean, now you've now got basically 20 years of they're the greatest team of all time, most likely this dynasty of the Patriots. Well, how many people really believe that their dynasty was all because they had the best team, the best dynasty, the best coach, the best quarterback? I mean, I think you can probably put some confidence in that, but how much can you really? And how many people really do say, "Oh, they're the spying," especially since it just came up again this year or in 2019. They basically got caught doing the same kind of thing again. Who really can sit there and say that wasn't some kind of an impactful thing? Why would you, if it wasn't so helpful, why would you keep doing it? Why would you chance it? If you could just go out there and win every week without that stuff, then why would you keep doing that and risk that and the reason is because there's complicity within the league. Until there's a change in the commissioner, uh, Bill Belichick's going to stay as the coach, and the all of the backroom staff are going to stay. The quarterback will probably stay, and there's no reason to clean it up because the commissioner of the NFL is basically shielding him. I mean, they talk about the shield and protecting the league, and that's what they've done. And so, they probably look at like they've come out smelling like roses and the whole thing when it comes to their public portrayal of it, and the willing media. Uh, you know, tell me tell me a person who gets on ESPN or the Sunday night broadcast for NBC or the CBS pregame or the Fox pregame, whoever says, "Oh, the Patriots dynasty is," no, they just play right along because that's what they've been basically paid to do. The NFL says if you want to keep getting our television contracts, you're going to make sure that this is given as little play as possible. And so the NFL has, by their own standard and media fourth estate fiat, whatever you want to call it, they've basically put a stone wall to the media that could have possibly been independent, and they've snuffed it all out. And even with this, where it's come out again, it's been basically a whitewash, and you barely heard about it. That's what they've done. Baseball, they've opened up about it, and now it looks like a crap storm. And it's unfortunate because, fortunately, they've tried to protect the integrity. Unless there ends up being evidence that they've known about this for a lot longer, and they just, and it was only because Mike Fiers came out and said, "Hey, this is what's happening," and kind of like exposed it all, and that was when they had to save face. Maybe if, I don't know, pick somebody who's a sort of the I don't know, let's say Antonio Brown decided to say, "Hey, I think I saw some of that stuff up there in New England. Yeah, they even talked to me about it. They were doing this." Then maybe the NFL can't be like that. But I'm just throwing Antonio Brown out there because he was only there for like 2 or 3 weeks. And so for them to let him in at that point would be absurd. But let's say it's like Wes Welker. I mean, he was there for many years. Uh, Gronk. Uh, um, you name it. I mean, there's lots of people who could potentially know what the situation was there. Until that happens, it's just going to stay. And maybe it will happen after 5 years. Once Belichick's gone and retired and he gets to pick everybody that goes in the Hall of Fame from here on out, then maybe someone will come along and say, you know what? Of course, then they're probably going to risk not getting in the Hall of Fame. So good for you, NFL. Nobody believes that there was any fairness in that situation besides the handful of not Red Sox, Patriot fans that most of those Patriot fans are Red Sox fans. But anyway, there's Phil Reynolds and there is Ken Castro. Classic Boston style. They say they shouldn't have fired Carr. Would I consider putting a note or asterisk on the history books for the World Series win? Yeah, I think you probably would have to. I think that I, I don't know. It's just really it's just a rough situation, isn't it? I mean, it's amazing the parallels between the two, between stealing signs, New England stealing signs most likely, and the two opposite ways of handling it. And you know and the thing with baseball right now is we don't see what happens in the next 5 years yet. We don't know what's it going to look like in 2025 because of all of this. What's the how does this affect people? I would hope that putting a hard line down and saying we aren't going to tolerate this at all, you're going to lose jobs over this. That would be the admirable thing to do, as opposed to the other way, because we've got 12 years. That was back in what, 08, 07 or 08 when Spygate was brought to the fore by Eric Mangini and kind of exposed and all this stuff. We've got the 12 years to know that, well, the NFL whitewashed it, and you've pretty much got 3/4 of the country who are still NFL fans, but who trust this dynasty absolutely. They wouldn't let them around their 20-year-old daughter. They that's how little that you can trust what has gone on, and the integrity and the morality that goes on around that place. Nobody. But you've got the 25% or whatever that is. I'm just making up a number because I don't know, who are Patriot fans and the NFL subsidized media who just continue to play along with, oh, this is the greatest franchise of all time. That really wouldn't have made much of a difference. Everybody cheats, Everybody's, here I'm going to get this. I've got this URL that shows you how every team has cheated in the last 20 years, just like the Patriots. And it's like, oh, this guy for PEDs and this guy, it's like, okay, well, sure, we're going to, let's Patriots have the PED guys too. So I'm not sure the other teams are out there videotaping their opponents without consent and against the rules. So keep trying. Keep forwarding those links. They're excellent to read. They're very insightful. Like anyway. Asterisk might be a Pandora's box. Yeah. Maybe the best thing to do is just to say the Astros were still a good team. You don't get the record that they had just on home performance. They still did it on the road. All you're trying to do with suspensions is prevent the next team from doing it. And basically losing your job and getting ridiculed on national television, I mean, that may be good enough. I kind of agree. I guess I've now brought myself to the point where maybe some of the players should have gotten some time off. You know, you really need to just say that this is not going to be worth it for you. Because right now, like you say, Astros, they have a championship. Red Sox, they have a championship. And nobody's taking that away. So I guess it's worth it. But all right. Well, been going on a long time here. Do I think Clemens and Bonds get into Hall of Fame tomorrow? Let's. Oh. Yeah. They probably won't, but I think they're going to be very soon. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. I think at some point you just have to say what's a Hall of Fame, But I mean, it's the same thing with Pete Rose. What's a Hall of Fame without those guys? What's a baseball Hall of Fame? Sure, you're talking uh, the other thing about the thing with Bonds and Clemens. I think you're hard pressed to say that the league was just oblivious to all of this. They had to have known, and so all they needed to do was just be more on the front foot about it and say we're going to stop. But they were benefiting from it. That McGuire Sosa deal back in the early 2000s. I mean, that was dang gold. That was printing money for baseball, and then you had the Bonds thing after that. What's a Hall of Fame? What's a baseball Hall of Fame without players like that? And what's a baseball Hall of Fame without Pete Rose? What's his face? I can see his name and I can't even think of his name now. It was sealing for so long. But the commissioner, I mean, he just needs to get out there and say, you know what? Hall of Fame, the PED guys, no problem. No problem. Pete Rose, no problem. I'm rescinding that, and I want to encourage you that we're going to make sure that guys who belong in the Hall of Fame are in the Hall of Fame. And, done are the days of these long-term bans where, I don't know. I just think you're past the point. Manafort. No, not Manafort. Manfred. Manafort's another guy. That's the guy that's in jail. Manfred is his name. And, I think you just have to sort of say, let's let bygones be bygones. These are people that fans rooted for decades, right? I mean, McGuire, Sosa, Bonds, Palmeiro, Clemens. At some point you just have to wipe the deck clean and say, and I'm a guy who said throw the book at them for many years, but I'm just not so sure anymore. It's just been gone. I mean, what you really need to do is you need to say, from here on out, you get caught with them, and we're going to make these penalties such that there's no way you're going to end up in the Hall of Fame. We're going to, first offense will be the 80 days. Second offense, ban from baseball. You cannot play anymore. You cannot play anymore. If you don't play anymore, you're not getting in the Hall of Fame. Then there's no worries about discussion, right? Right? That's the way you do it. You don't worry about the Hall of Fame afterwards. You endorsed it back in the day. You had Bud Selig, who's just like, oh, I don't know. I can't decide whether or not to make the All-Star game mean that my World Series home team is going to be based off of that or not. While my players are all looking like a bunch of linebackers, right? I mean, that's how. But guess what? He was making a boatload of money off of it. So, of course, he did nothing. So, they were complicit in it. So, why should Bonds and Clemens and McGuire and all these other guys pay the price for a certifiable idiot like Bud Selig, who was only there because he got rich for some unknown reason? I don't even know. I mean, maybe he was a smart guy when he made his money, but all he cared about was, let's make some more money. And he cared nothing about all of the years. He did care enough about integrity, though, to make sure that whatever Bart Giamatti or Faye Vincent or whoever else is behind the whole Pete Rose crap, that they were going to honor that crap, and Manfred has too. And the embargo on him is, I mean, granted, he's not a good guy either necessarily. Pete Rose was a he had his, but fame does that, and if you fame unchecked is a bad thing. Salvador never rooted for those guys. Well, a lot of us wouldn't have. I wouldn't have rooted for him. But let me ask you this: what about a guy like Ryan Howard? He's right on the edge of that. I don't know. He's in that gray area. He never tested positive, as far as I know, right? But I rooted for him. But he's in that gray area. He's like a guy who was really, really good, and then he tore an Achilles. He was starting to have injury problems anyway, but then he tore his Achilles and was nothing the same ever again. But, that makes you wonder. I don't know. I'm not trying to say Ryan Howard was on PEDs or anything like that. But, I don't know. We've got this sport where they just turn a blind eye to things all the time, and all the sports do it because they're making gobs of money. And basically, what it seems like a commissioner's job is to just make all of the scandals stay underground, drive them all underground, the dirty little secrets, the Tim Donahue's of the world, the Ernie Adams and Bill Belichick's of the world, and maybe Manfred just wasn't savvy enough to keep Mike Fiers' mouth shut, and he went and he's taken them down. He's taken down the Astros. He's taken down. He didn't take down the Red Sox, but everything sort of from that was deduced, I guess. And I don't know. Let's see what happens. We're going to have plenty more years of sports here ahead of us. I'm sure baseball will emerge from it just fine and dandy. We'll get back to worrying about whether or not they're going to outlaw the loogies and bring in DHs all together and, expand replay to include whether or not that jock strap adjustment is legal or not. We'll get there. We'll get there, guys. Don't worry. And it will still probably all roll out the same honor tabletop here, whether whether we don't ever get another Real Cormier or not. So, all right. Well, I've been meandering on here a while. I thank you guys for watching. If anybody's watching this after the fact, I hope you don't mind me going on about stuff. But I will say a lot of people who do what we do here on the tabletop, I mean, a lot of us are of the purest variety, I would say, are the traditionalist when it comes to sports, and we are really bought into the idea that these guys do it because they love it. Right now, I'm listening to, but I'm reading it. A Harlan Coben book called Fade Away. It's about a guy who is a former basketball player um, who joins a team, gets signed to help investigate. He's sort of a sports agent, former basketball player, um, and who also has done some work with the FBI as an undercover person. And it's at a part in the book where they're talking about the motives for people, and we all want to believe that they all do this for the love of the game, and they're out there they're out there every day at the batting practice, or throwing their pitches, doing their side days off the mound and blah blah blah, because this is just they've loved it since they were a kid, and and I once worked for a guy whose father-in-law had got to play in a pro-am with Tom Watson, or maybe they even were at the same country club. They remember the same country club, and even Tom Watson admitted that that was a job for him. It's like we want the purism, we want the passion, and I do this because it's just I was born to do it and I love it. As far as like playing these sports, and most of these guys are just dollar sign. That's what it's about. So I don't know. That probably doesn't make you guys feel a whole lot better, but again, when we put it here on the tabletop, it pretty much plays the same whether you've got someone thinking about this next at bat, meaning their next big payday when they become a free agent, or whether they are thinking, if I hit this out, our team's going to the World Series. And that's been my dream my whole life long. I don't know. Anyway, good night, everybody. Hit like if you did like this. If you didn't, let me know. I'm always open to listen. Appreciate everybody who supports the channel. And we will see you soon with some more tabletop sports here on Tabletop Baseball Plus. See you then.